It feels like everybody and their mom is chasing after what we're calling the film look. The grain, the halation, the color palette, all of these different things that make film feel like film. We're trying to take those things and put it onto our digital footage to give it the same feeling. There are so many different products out there that exist to help us do that, but there's one plugin that I feel like does it better than anything else, and that plugin is Filmbox. I've been using Filmbox for going on 3 years now. Video Village is in no way affiliated with this video. They don't even know that I'm doing it. I honestly just am surprised that not very many people are talking about Filmbox in the way that I think it deserves. Because ultimately, I think it gets us to that film look faster, more effectively, and better than anything else that exists right now. So in this video, we're gonna talk a little bit about what Filmbox is and why it's so special, and why I think it's the best bang for your buck when it comes to film emulation. I'm also going to take you into my own workflow within DaVinci Resolve and show you how I actually use Filmbox, the way that I, manipulate the colors, some of the settings that I like to change to really get it to a place that I feel like consistently brings me the best results when emulating film or just going for a really good look. That way, by the end of this video, you can make the choice for yourself if Filmbox is worth it or not. So let's get into it. Now, when it comes to all of these different products that exist within the film emulation space, the first question that most people ask is, which one is the best? Which one will give me the best results? Which one is the most accurate? Whatever, right? Those are the questions that we as the user are asking when we're looking at our digital footage, wanting to make it look like film. But what if, and this is Video Village's approach, we're not actually searching for the tool that looks the most accurate, but rather the one that feels the most accurate. Now, what the heck does that mean? Well, Video Village on their website is completely right when they say that trying to get the film look is like shooting a moving target. Are we trying to emulate the film look from back in the day when there was no such thing as digital cameras or color grading software? It was just a negative and then a print film in a projection. That's what it was. That was the process. That was the actual look of film back in the day. Or are we going after more of the modern day film look, where filmmakers are shooting and then they're taking it into, say, DaVinci Resolve and tweaking the colors and printing it to LUTs that are supposed to look like the old print films back in the day? Which one is it? The idea of accuracy becomes a little confusing when we're talking about which one looks the most like film. I really appreciate that Video Village approaches making a film emulation plugin with all of this in mind. They decided to find a nice middle ground, one that actually is a very good middle ground for people like us. It's great for people who are straight beginners and they're just trying to get their footage to look good straight out the gate. And it's really great for professionals like colorists. Filmbox was actually used in the process of color grading the Oscar-winning film Everything Everywhere All at Once. They used the grain and halation from Filmbox because it was just so good. And that's pretty cool. All of that stuff wouldn't matter at all if using Filmbox was a terrible experience, the end result was crap, and you just, it was a waste of $1,000. You're just sitting there crying, right? Thankfully, none of those things are true. One, Filmbox is a joy to use. It is literally like the Apple product of film emulation. It's smooth, it's slick, it works well, it's not clunky whatsoever. It's just such an easy plugin to use. Right out the gate, putting Filmbox on your footage usually just looks awesome. And I'm excited to show you that in DaVinci Resolve. So let's jump into DaVinci Resolve and I'll show you the experience of using Filmbox for your own footage. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can tweak it to maybe fit your own workflow or your own personal tastes a little bit better. So here we are in DaVinci Resolve. And as you can see, there's a couple of different kinds of clips in the timeline here. We've got some Blackmagic RAW B-RAW clips. We've got some Arri Alexa Mini ProRes Quad 4 clips, and then we've got some DJI Ronin 4D 6K footage clips in ProRes 422HQ. Blah. The reason for that is just I want to give you a full sort of perspective on how Filmbox works and how it works across different kinds of cameras. So before we jump into that, let me show you quickly how I normally set up my node structure. It's usually very simple. I add 2 extra nodes here, and I just label this one Filmbox. That's obviously the node that we're going to put Filmbox onto. This first node we're going to label as primaries, which is really just allowing us to make sure that our exposure, the white balance, and everything is set up properly before we even hit Filmbox. And the second node, I usually just do a LUT or a CST. Really, I just need a node where I can temporarily add on a conversion LUT or a color space transform to Rec 709 so that I can see my footage, not in log, but in the actual color space I want to be working in. So let's go ahead and just add in our conversion LUT. I use just the basic one from DaVinci Resolve. It's the Blackmagic Gen 5 film to extended video. You throw it on, and we can kind of see what we're working with right out the gate. We can quickly jump into our primaries, or if you have it, a camera raw tab, and adjust your exposure and your white balance. The white balance, thankfully, is looking pretty good, but the exposure does look a little hot. So I'm gonna bring this down just a touch to get it kind of where I think I'm gonna want it. So that looks pretty good to me. So now it's time to actually put Filmbox on our footage. We're gonna turn off this correction node, grab an instance of Filmbox, and drop it onto the Filmbox node. As you can see, it's already going to work pretty heavily, and now we can get into the nitty-gritty of actually using Filmbox. The first thing that you have to do when working with Filmbox, like most plugins, is you have to tell the plugin what the footage is or where it's coming from. This footage I shot on a Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro, and I know that the color space was the Film Gen 5 color space. So I'm gonna click on that. It's going to immediately change this image to reflect that color space. I'm gonna go ahead and close the camera module because like I said, use the primaries node that I made earlier to adjust things like my white balance or exposure, or I use the camera tab and adjust the B-RAW settings. Within the negative module here, this is where you can adjust based off of the different presets that Video Village has made from the different film stocks, what you wanna start with. For the most part, I'm jumping between either this 250D clean preset, which looks like this, or this 50D clean preset, which looks like this. It's very subtle, but if you watch the vector scope as I switch back and forth between these, you can kind of see how they differ from one another. Just if you're curious, the 500T clean looks like this, and the 200T clean looks like this. The clean just indicates that it's not going to have any dust or gate weave or anything like that. It's just going to be a clean representation of this 250D clean look. So I stick with the 250D clean, and then I jump into these advanced settings based off of the look that I'm going for. The first thing that I do is I jump into the halation tab and make sure that it's enabled. If you selected the preset, it should be. If you zoom in on this guy's shoulder here, my boy Jared, if you turn it off and on, you can subtly see on his shoulder the halation going to work. I oftentimes though, because it does have a softening effect, if you look at his face here, you can kind of see it very subtly. I like to increase the sharpness up to like 0.7 or 0.75. And for the most part, I feel like this gets me where I want it to be. Just leaves the sharpness in the image and it doesn't bring the softness back. Again, this is for the look that I am going for. Not only that, you can adjust the color of the halation. I never changed this, but you can if you want. You can add a little bit more red to it. You can add a little bit more green to it. I like the way that Filmbox renders halation. I think it's accurate. I think that they know what they were doing when they made this, so I don't mess around with it. I just leave it as it is. The second thing that I'll do is I'll jump into the grain tab. For the most part, I'm sticking with the Super 35 250D grain preset. However, zooming in here, if I switch over to the 500T, which is another option that I switch to sometimes, see that it adds just a little bit more punch to the grain, which of course it does because it's a different film stock. So depending on what the scene is, if I'm looking for something that wants a little bit more grain or it feels like it needs a little bit more grain, I know that I have these options at my disposal. If I hate all of these options and I really want something custom, you know, I can go in, adjust the strength, adjust where the grain is going to play the most, whether it's in the highlights, the midtones, or the shadows. And you know, you can get really creative with what the grain looks like. I trust the Video Village people with my heart and life, so for the most part, I am just sticking with the base settings that they recommend with each of these presets because I think they look really good. So we're gonna go ahead and close the negative module. We're pretty much done there. A lot of work now happens in this lab module. The lab module is one of my favorite parts of Filmbox because I feel like this is really where you can make the colors and the contrast of your image really come to life. So for this image specifically, one of the first things that I notice about it is that it lacks a little bit of saturation and a little bit of contrast. This is very subjective to whatever you feel like you want for your footage, but I feel like this image needs a little bit of that. So normally what I would do is I'll enable the lab and then I'll pump the vibrance up just to add a little bit of saturation to the image. I don't like to go too crazy with this, but something like that is starting to look really good. If we on off this, you can see, and if you're watching the scopes, you can see that vibrance, that saturation got added in, and it looks really great. And like I said, I feel like this image specifically needs a little bit of contrast. So I'm gonna add just a touch until I feel like it looks pretty good. And to me, that is starting to look real nice. So if we on off this, I mean, that's Filmbox going to work. The next thing that I do within the lab module is I add a little bit of split toning. As I push this intensity up, watch the vector scope here. It's going to just ever so slightly squeeze that vector scope down that skin tone indicator and towards a little bit of cyan. And I mean, look at this image. I mean, I feel like it's not the most amazing shot in the world, but the colors and the contrast and the way these trees look and his skin and everything, the grain, it's just looking really, really nice. So let's go ahead and close this lab module and open the last module, which is the print module. The print module represents Filmbox interpretation of Kodak's 2383 print film. The three different options that it offers are full, which is a full-on, full contrasty, full color shifted version that emulates the 2383 film almost perfectly. Next, we have standard, which is just a toned down version. It allows for a little bit more room in the shadows, and it's just a little bit less intense. And this last option, extended, is more of a commercial, digital, you know, it doesn't have the strong filmic color characteristics, but it gives you the ability to still have stronger contrast, a bit better of a color look, and all of the other characteristics that Filmbox adds. I usually like to use full, but if it's a little too strong, I'll jump to standard. And to my eye, I feel like this shot is looking awesome. One of my favorite parts about Filmbox is that it's very easy to copy and paste it to footage that was shot on the same camera in the same color space, even if it was a completely different lit environment. Take this example, for instance. This is a nighttime scene where the white balance is completely different than the previous shot. You know, it's just a different shot. But if we paste that Filmbox node from this last clip right onto this node, I mean, everything that we just spent time doing in that last node with the grain, the halation, all that stuff, it's just carried right over. Now, of course, that's nothing new. I just honestly think it's super handy to be able to do that in one node, not a compound node, not crazy amounts of things that you have to adjust per shot. I mean, it's so easy if we're looking at this shot and we're saying, oh, maybe we need to change the exposure a little bit. Okay, great. You know, you can go into the camera raw and change the exposure. Or you're looking at it and you're saying, I feel like the contrast is a little too much. Well, then you can go into the lab selection and change the contrast slider to match what you feel like works best for the shot. It's so dang easy. It feels like cheating just going through each of your shots using Filmbox, especially when you're using the same camera. So now that you've seen it on B-raw, let's just for fun do it on one more clip that isn't raw. Say this shot from the Alexa Mini in ProRes Quad 4. Let's go ahead and add Filmbox onto this node. I don't need to change the source because, like I said, it's already in the right source. But if we jump over to the negative tab, let's go ahead and change this to the 500T clean. I feel like nighttime scenes look really nice with tungsten films or tungsten balance films. So let's go ahead and try it. I think it looks pretty nice. In the advanced settings, the first thing I want to do is just bring the grain back just a little bit. I feel like it looks pretty nice for the most part, but it's a little strong. Then within the lab section, let's go ahead and add a little bit of vibrance to this shot. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of contrast just to bring out those clouds a little bit more. That to me looks pretty nice. We already have a pretty strong split tone going, so I don't need to add any more. The last thing I want to do is flick this over to the full mode. Oh yeah, that's nice. And just the benefits of using Filmbox. Again, I mean, if you're just trying to grade some of these clips quickly, you don't really have to do too much other than, you know, doing basic white balancing and, you know, exposure adjustments. I mean, I'm literally pasting the plugin on these different shots, and it's just getting us to such a good starting point without having to do a single thing. Obviously, I have some of these, you know, camera raw settings dialed in, like say the exposure or the white balance. But come on, man. I mean, like literally so easy to get a good look with Filmbox in just a couple of clicks. I just feel like it's very simple and straightforward of a plugin to just copy and paste it to your footage and get a really good starting point without having to mess around too much with the settings and get overwhelmed with tons of different nodes and layers and transforms and all these things that just don't benefit the creative experience, in my opinion, but really hinder it. Being able to get your footage in just a couple of clicks and sliders and tweaks, if it's good looking footage, I mean, it's so easy to do in Filmbox, and it just sings the praise of itself and how easy it is to use this plugin and how easy it is to just get some really great looks right out the gate, not having to do too much work at the front end. Now, of course, when people talk about Filmbox, yes, they usually focus on two things. So, yeah, it looks amazing, but two, it is super expensive. $1,000 for a perpetual license, it's expensive. No matter who you are, it's a lot of money for a plugin. I'm not here to sit and tell you whether it's worth it or not to you. Hopefully, by the end of the video, you've kind of already made the decision for yourself. In my opinion, it's worth every single penny. If you're somebody that wants the best of the best, I feel like you're going to have a hard time arguing with somebody that this is not it. There are other alternative plugins that I myself own and have used in the past. So, of course, Filmbox is not your only hope. You can get really good results with other things. I think just with Filmbox, the benefits are straight out of the gate, you get a really good look. You don't have to do too much to make it look good. That's not the case usually with some other products that I've tried. You got to work a little bit harder to make them work for you. To me, I feel like when we have cameras that cost $3,000, lenses that cost $1,000, $1,500, hard drives, monitors, lights, when you think about this as an investment into your own personal pipeline of color grading or your own post-production workflow, I think it makes a little bit more sense rather than just a one-off toy that you can buy and try out. If that's the case and you just want to try it out, use the free version of their plugin for a little bit and see if you like it. That way you're not wasting any money and you can kind of get a sense for, yep, this is going to be great for me, or you know what? I think I'm going to stick with something else. Like I said, this video is not a sales pitch. It's not a sponsored video. I just genuinely love this product and I've been using it for a long time, and I wanted to share my thoughts just because I feel like it's about dang time somebody talked about this plugin. I hope this video in some ways was helpful for you and gave you a little bit of insight into the film emulation world and how you can get the best results. And that's all I got for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.